Happy Friday. It's been a long week. I am so glad it's Friday. So to continue on, some of the things I've been talking about to provide you guys some information is another thing that you need to consider with health insurance is provider networks. So why are provider networks important? Well, you want to know if you use a doctor in network, you're usually going to save a whole lot more money than if you go out of network. But here's kind of the catch on that. You know, you can do, hopefully I educate all my clients to do their homework ahead of time. Select your providers ahead of time. Knowing who your doctor is easy. But if you're sick or you have an emergency, do you know who's in network? So one of the things I teach all my policyholders to do is to look up the closest urgent care center or an urgent care center that's close, look up the ER and find out who's in network. Because you want to write that down and take a note of it in case there is an emergency. Yes, you want to get to the place as soon as possible, and that is certainly not going to be at the top of your mind. Where do I go? Who's my provider? You just want to be cared for, have your loved one cared for. But, when the bills come later, then you're going, oh, crap, I should have figured out who was in network and who was not in network. So if you look that up ahead of time and make note, that's ideal. And what you need to do as well is also check with these network providers to make sure they always bill in network. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is there's actually some standalone urgent care centers that do bill as urgent care centers, but only for certain periods of the day. I came across a client that actually went to an urgent care center that was in network, but it was after 8 p.m. and they billed as an ER. And the coverage was much different. So you have to be your own advocate. I know I say this a lot, but you can't just pay premium and, everyone gripes about how high premiums are, but nobody wants to take the time to figure out how to save themselves some money. It does require some effort on your part and buy-in. So the other thing you can do is if you have some kind of planned procedure at a hospital, you always want to make sure the hospital is in network. What happens again sometimes is you'll go in for a procedure, and I had this happen to a client recently. They had a baby, OBGYN's in network, hospital's in network. Apparently the pediatrician on call that weekend was not in network. They were stuck with a $7,000 bill because the hospital utilizes out-of-network providers. So that is something you can ask the hospital ahead of time. If you're having something planned, go up there. They usually want you to do all your pre-op stuff ahead of time and find out, is the anesthesiologist in network? Do you utilize out-of-network providers that are not in your same network? If they don't know, then get a list of doctors who could potentially be on call. Hopefully that list isn't too big, depends where you go. But there may be a way to request an in-network provider. There may not be. So what you do in those cases, if you get stuck with an out-of-network provider, you call them and say, hey, I'm out-of-network, so now I'm a cash pay patient. What is your cash price for this procedure you just billed me X amount, $7,000 for? And their cash price is going to be a fraction. They may not want to give it to you, and they're not going to give it to you without asking. But if they expect to get paid, then they're going to have to give you a cash price. So really, you're going to have to be persistent with them and tell them, hey, it is not my fault you're not in network. I had no control over who the hospital called, if that's the case. And, say, hey, if you don't want to work with me on this payment, then, I'll pay you $10 a month till it's done, which they don't want to do. I can promise. I worked in medical offices. We don't want to do that. So what you do is you offer them a fair amount. If you get stuck with an out-of-network provider, which I can tell you a fair amount would be about 30% of the total bill. You offer them that and tell them you will pay cash in full or credit card in full right now if they will accept that as payment in full. And a lot of times you can do that. And if they won't, wait till the bill gets to be 90 days old. They're much more willing to bargain with you once that bill is 90 days old. So not everybody plays nice. There's certain hospitals that are really bad, and I'm not going to mention any names here because I don't want anybody to sue me, but I've had plenty of clients. There's places I steer them clear of because I know they overcharge, and I know they make it very difficult to negotiate with them, which is your right. It is your right to negotiate, especially if you didn't have a choice of providers. That's something that, I want people to do to the best of their ability. There's still going to be instances where maybe that didn't happen for different reasons. If you're having a heart attack and, you're not going to negotiate, ask the anesthesiologist is a network, you're having a heart attack, you want to be taken care of. But sometimes you can get that information ahead of time from the hospitals, ask them who they utilize, who's on staff. And by doing that, there's a good chance you can help minimize your out-of-pocket expenses. The whole name of the game is it is your money. Do not give your money away if you don't have to. People shop around for other things. They shop around for TVs, for cars, but people don't think to shop around for doctors or healthcare, and you guys just have to do it. It'll be more consumer driven if people will just do this, and the doctors won't have a choice but to play, or they won't be doctors. So I don't want this to sound like I'm against doctors, but the whole billing part of it, and it usually has to do with hospitals, not so much individual providers. You can usually work with them. It's the things you don't think you have a lot of choice of when you go to a hospital. So ask questions. Be your own advocate. Don't feel bad. Don't pay. If you ever get a medical bill, do not pay it in full. Review it and call them. Say, hey, you charged me this. I don't have it. This was an emergency. What's your cash price? And sometimes you may have to talk to a supervisor, whatever, but I can only encourage you. I can tell you it works. It took me 15 months to resolve a lab bill. It works. I paid nothing because I knew it was covered by insurance. They kept coding it incorrectly. I had to get the doctor's office involved as well as the lab till it finally was resolved, and then we paid $0 out of pocket. Know your rights, know what you can do. Catch you on the flip side.